Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy. In today's video, I'm bringing you guys a best ball draft, a 10-team best ball draft on drafters.com. This is their early NFL best ball championship with a huge prize. If you come in first, second, third, fourth, there's prizes for a lot of the places, and it's not even full yet, so there is going to be potential for you guys to snag some even more free money because there won't be as many people playing in it. If you guys want to join me on Drafters, you can use the link down below or just type in code Notorious when depositing and you can play on here with me. You can add me as a friend. I also use another website for best ball as well, so this isn't the only one I play on, but for this video, we're going to be playing on Drafters. The draft began with Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and now it is my pick, and to me, at this point, it is kind of a no-brainer. I am going with Saquon Barkley. I'm not at all worried about the torn ACL, while I am slightly worried, right? But I'm not worried enough to where I would not draft Saquon Barkley, who to me is one of the best running backs in the NFL, and happily at pick number 4, a guy I could see going at the end of the year and finishing as the running back 1. I'll be very happy drafting Saquon Barkley at the 104. At the 105, we have Derrick Henry, followed by Travis Kelce and Davante Adams. This is a very typical start to your first round. You're going to see a bunch of running backs go off the board until I would say pick 5 or 6, and then someone's going to get a little spicy and maybe draft a tight end or a wide receiver. In this case, we see Travis Kelce come off the board at the 106. Kelce is going to be a first-round pick, regardless of how much people kind of want to besmirch the tight end in the first-round pick. Well, I'm not necessarily all on board saying you have to draft Travis Kelce inside the first round. You can find tight ends later, but obviously when you get a guy like Travis Kelce who is so dominant at the position, who week in, week out is going to put up like 15 or 20 points, you just have such a strong positional advantage at the tight end position with a guy like Travis Kelce. Next up, we saw Davante Adams, Aaron Jones, Kelce, Tyreek the Freak Hill, Jonathan Taylor, and Cam Akers. Now, I talked about Cam Akers a decent amount in yesterday's video about how I feel he's ultra safe. Now, the ADP was pick 11 on that video, and I guess it seems to be right, going at pick 11 in this draft. I think, though, amongst the normal fantasy football audience, right, I'm drafting with people who, you know, they're drafting in fucking April, so they might know a little bit more than the Joe Schmo in your league, so maybe that's why Cam Akers is going off so early now, because I feel like in most leagues, a guy like Nick Chubb or Ezekiel Elliott has much more household name stay compared to a guy like Cam Akers. After Nick Chubb, we saw Austin Eckler, who I really like inside of the second round. Now, we've only seen 4 non-running backs picked inside of the first 2 rounds so far. But likely, that's exactly how it's going to go in a majority of fantasy drafts because people like to really load up onto the running back position and then much later in the draft attack wide receivers. That's why the wide receiver value right now is so strong. Being able to get Stephon Diggs at the 2-6, who I talked about yesterday's video as well, as a guy I could see finishing as the number 1 wide receiver. But I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins at this pick. I am ultra confident in this Baltimore Ravens offense at creating rushing yards. They like to rush the ball throughout the whole entire game. They're a team that should be able to score big points and be able to rush out later in the game. And I think that J.K. Dobbins now, his spot is even better. Now, obviously last season, there was definitely worries going into the fantasy football drafts that Mark Ingram was going to be a pest. A straight up menace to J.K. Dobbins, which came true. He was. And until Mark Ingram was kind of getting healthy scratched, we weren't able to see the full-on J.K. Dobbins show that we kind of deserved, and we did end up seeing it at the end of last season, so I'm very much bought in to the J.K. Dobbins hype train. After that was Antonio Gibson, followed by DK Metcalf, and Joe Mixon closes out the second round. Interesting to see where Joe Mixon ends up falling in fantasy drafts, because I'm a fan of Joe Mixon. I actually very much think that he is one of the better running backs in the NFL, but he really has yet to prove it due to the fact that the Bengals are kind of a dumpster fire. The offensive line wasn't helping him, but now that Giovanni Bernard is gone from the team, now he's in Tampa Bay. Does that mean that Joe Mixon is really in for a bigger season? We'll have to see what happens with the offensive line, because if the offensive line is bad again, then I'm going to be looking away from Joe Mixon, but if it's good, I'm going to be looking for Mr. Mixon. At round 3, we see Miles Sanders, followed by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, in a best ball league, I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he's going to have those big kind of games, but on a weekly basis, I'm not too sure how much I trust a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. After that, we see DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I don't think I even gave a full explanation on what best ball is, and pretty much what best ball is you start the draft, you do your draft, and then at the end of the draft, you don't have to do anything because the computer automatically puts in your best lineup week in and week out. Now we are back up on the board at our pick, and while the running backs are kind of falling off, I want to hop onto the tight end train here. Darren Waller is available inside of the 3rd round, and while I'm not someone, again, who's super bullish on drafting a tight end early in my fantasy football draft, when the value falls with a guy like Darren Waller. Sure, the Las Vegas Raiders aren't the best team in the NFL, and I don't really trust John Gruden, but what you can trust is him giving Darren Waller 7 zillion targets every single game. He seems to be so involved in this offense, and now I don't really have to worry too much about finding 2 super late tight ends that I could put on my roster. Now, I'm pretty happy with Darren Waller, and if this was a real redraft league, I wouldn't even draft another tight end. Now, since this is best ball, and since there's a chance of injury or anything, and you can't really make any moves in the offseason, you just got to rely on your bench, I obviously have to draft another tight end, but talking about redraft sense, now you're just locked and loaded in. At least at the tight end position. So, our team so far, we got Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, and Darren Waller. How would our team have looked different maybe if we drafted a guy like A.J. Brown or Justin Jefferson there and then draft a tight end later? We won't know until a little bit later, but that's obviously a nice thought experiment to think about. After with Darren Waller, A.J. Brown came off the board, followed by Mr. Swift, Justin Jefferson, James Robinson, Calvin Ridley, Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, and Allen Robinson. Now, what a fall from grace it has been for the one, the only Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas was the locked and loaded wide receiver 1 going into last season. Now, obviously, there were people who had Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins ranked higher than him, but a majority were following the Michael Thomas train, and it kind of got derailed last season, but at the value at the 310, I just cannot deny that he is a solid value at that pick. After Allen Robinson, we see Amari Cooper. Now, what to do with Allen Robinson? Allen Robinson has always put up big numbers with these fucking terrible quarterbacks, right? He did it with Blake Bortles. He's done it with 9-inch Nick Foles. He's done it with the MVP, Mitch Trubisky. But will he be able to get it done with Andy Dalton? Probably, but I don't necessarily love it. Has RBBB? Oh, no, I thought he drafted 4 running backs in a row. He has Travis Kelce, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, and Najee Harris. Now, you are going to see a lot of these rookie running backs go in the 4th and 5th round, and by a lot of them, I mean the main ones, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, as well as Javonte Williams. Now, obviously, one of those guys is probably going to end up being like a 2nd or 3rd round pick in real fantasy drafts come August, based upon where they land in the draft. Some good landing spots, like Miami. Now, Arizona was a big landing spot for these guys, but now James Conner is there, and I'm interested to see where James Conner, as well as Chase Edmonds, end up going off in this draft. Now, Josh Jacobs is a guy that I'm hitting with the straight-up Michael Jordan fadeaway, so I'm not looking his way. I am going to end up going wide receiver at this pick, and I want to snag my boy Julio Jones. Now, I understand that Julio Jones is getting up there in age, but when he plays, he's a top 12 wide receiver. There's no denying that. Last year, he finished low, obviously, because he only played in a couple of games, but on a points-per-game basis, he was a top 15 wide receiver in all categories. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that Julio Jones should have a bounce-back season. After Julio came Josh Jacobs and Devontae Murray, you silly goose, David Montgomery. So looking at the draft board right now, not a single quarterback has came off the board. Now, obviously, in your at-home league, the quarterbacks and where they get drafted is just straight up in the air. In your league, Mahomes might be the first pick in the draft, or he might fall much further. It really just depends on your league's philosophy on drafting quarterbacks. A way to kind of figure that out is if you're not new to the league, you've been playing for a little bit with these guys or gals, you go into the draft history and you find, hey, when did Lamar come off the board last year? And then you can kind of gauge where the quarterbacks are going to come off the board. But typically, I'm a stay away from the quarterbacks until a little bit later in my draft. So after David Montgomery came off the board, came CeeDee Lamb, followed by Chris Godwin. Now, I think I am going to be one of those guys that just tells you to stay the fuck away from Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I think that with how Tom Brady kind of sprinkles the targets around, right? He's not necessarily just throwing to one of these guys that I don't really love either of them in fantasy drafts. Obviously, in the 5th round, would I draft Mike Evans or Chris Godwin? Yes, but I do believe by the time we're actually drafting in August, people are going to talk themselves into drafting him much higher, as well as Mike Evans. Pat Mahomes coming at the 502. And now we are up on the board after Mark Andrews came off the board. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So we're back up on the board, and I'm glad I didn't go running back because a guy that I think is one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL is still available, and that's running back Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks. No one seems to give this guy any credit when he's pretty much rushing for 1,000 yards, at least in the last 2 seasons. The guy has been very consistent, and he's also able to get some nice receiving yards and receptions for your fantasy football team. Now, why are people not really on board with Chris Carson? It's because I talked about this before. It's because the guy's not a sexy name, right? You throw Chris Carson out there, and he doesn't do anything super special, right? You've never seen Chris Carson fucking hurdle over a guy and make some highlight play you see on ESPN. But in the trenches, this guy's working hard. He's scoring fantasy points. He's just not a super sexy name. He doesn't have the name that even David Montgomery has. And I think that Chris Carson is a very sneaky 4th, 5th round pick in a lot of drafts that I am going to be laying my target directly onto. And I think this Seattle team is going to look to run the ball a little bit more in 2021. After we went with Chris Carson, we see Josh Allen followed by Mike Evans and DJ Moore. Now, typically, after one asshole ends up picking a quarterback, the floodgates open wide open. I'm talking about like how Moses split the Red Sea type of deal. Then boom, they start flooding out. Now, it may not happen in this draft, but it does happen in a lot of drafts because someone will draft Mahomes, then the guy drafts Allen, then the next guy's like, oh shit, I need to get Kyler Murray before my buddy behind me ends up drafting him, and then I'm not going to get him in the next round, and then panic ensues, and we call that a run. Now, I'm not talking about a run like the runs like diarrhea, like some Pepto-Bismol type deal. I'm talking about a run on a position. It also happens with tight end, probably sometime soon. We're going to see Hawkinson come off the board, and then the next guy is going to panic, or someone near him is going to panic, and then Tanyan, Fant, and Goddard will probably all end up coming off the board. Now, it's interesting to see where Kyle Pitts falls in these drafts, because while rookie tight ends are not really notorious for finishing super high in a year fantasy football league, obviously for redraft in the rookie season, it is entirely possible that Kyle Pitts, as one of the most freak athletes to ever come into the NFL draft, could completely Hulk smash through the mold and be amazing. So I'm interested to see where Pitts ends up going, as well as where he ends up going in the NFL draft. It's kind of narrowed down, in my opinion, to a couple of teams. I feel as though Pitts is either going to be a Dolphin or an Atlanta Falcon. Now, again, I could be wrong. He could go to the Bengals. That is entirely possible, but those are the 2 teams I'm thinking about for Pitts. Now we're back up. I will recap, obviously, what happened before that. We kind of just glossed over after this. So we're definitely waiting on quarterback. We're going to go ahead and snag another wide receiver. Now, you guys know that I absolutely hate Lockett in redraft leagues, but we're talking best ball here, and this guy's potential to me is unreal. He will have these really down games, but he also has those super duper boom games a couple of times every single year, and that's what's going to help me win in best ball. In redraft, you don't really want him because the computer isn't setting your lineup. It's not going to know, hey, Lockett dropped 50 points, put him in there. No, you have to make the decision, and it's likely you're going to make the wrong decision a majority of the time. Why is that? Because this guy literally bends over a garbage defense over the table, drops like 60 points. Then will drop like 4 points against another garbage defense, 4 points against another garbage defense, and then he'll drop like 60 against the best defense in the league because, frankly, there is no rhyme or reason to Lockett's production. It's strictly random, at least in my opinion. Now, obviously, it's not random. He's going to go off. No, it really is kind of random, in my opinion. After that, we see Short King, Kyler Murray, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, and Odell Beckham Jr. Now, when are you guys willing to take Odell? I think there is a chance Odell Beckham Jr. ends up getting traded off of the Browns, but if he's still a Brown and they're running the ball as much as they did last year, why are you drafting Odell? Like, I'm a big fan of Jarvis, But I don't even want to be drafting Jarvis in that case. Now we're back up on the board here. Claypool and Boyd go before our pick. So it's interesting to see with what we are left here, what's going to happen in the NFL draft. Now this best ball championship is just early NFL, meaning it goes before the NFL draft. So we won't know what actually happens. So I don't know if I want to go with Sutton just yet because I'm nervous. Frankly, I'm nervous that Denver won't bring in a quarterback, so we're going to go with Will Fuller. Now, he is suspended for the first game of the season. That is something to obviously note for the PEDs, but I think him and Tua are going to have a great connection. I think he's going to get open and have those huge boom games that I need to win on a weekly basis. That's kind of what I'm hunting for in best ball leagues, is to hunt for upside players that maybe Will Fuller will take a dump 1 week, and then hopefully Lockett fills in there and goes absolutely ham. That's why there's kind of a strategy within best ball to go with 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 receivers, and 3 tight ends is kind of the strategy. Now, obviously, you can kind of flip those around because we already drafted Darren Waller, so we don't necessarily need to draft 3 tight ends. We can only draft 2. And then if maybe you draft Kyler Murray, maybe you're not like, you know what, I need 3 quarterbacks, maybe only draft 2 in that case as well. But you kind of really want to get a load of wide receivers because you have to start 3, and then you want the second most of the running back position. So after one with Will Fuller, Javonte Williams came off the board, followed by Justin Herbert the pervert. So Herbert comes off the board as quarterback 4. Interesting. Now, I'm a big fan of Justin Herbert. I understand that in the past I trashed him when they drafted him. Why did I trash him? Because everyone was fucking trashing him. Everyone thought Justin Herbert would be a certified bust, like one that Johnny Sins blew on Riley Reid's face, okay? But instead, he wasn't that. He was completely and utterly dominant from when Tyrod Taylor got stabbed in the lung to the end of the season. So, we were all kind of wrong. Yeah, it is what it is, right? You're going to get things wrong, but now you correct for it, and you start drafting him high in fantasy leagues. But is he better than Dak or Lamar? I don't know. Now, a case here that is very confusing is what to do with Deshaun Watson in best ball. Now, again, I have no idea if he did it, if he didn't do it, fucking no clue. But I am not drafting him in best ball because I don't want to have my quarterback not play a single game, so I'd much rather fade him and just go down the list, and we'll see where he ends up going later. Again, not really looking to get into some type of deep conversation about Deshaun because we really just don't know at this point. After Lamar, we see Baby Chark, Baby Chark, followed by Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, interesting. Claypool goes in the 7th. Juju goes in the 7th. Where did Deontay Johnson end up getting drafted? Am I blind? Is he still available? Deontay Johnson. No, he's clearly already been taken. He must go way earlier. And I know what you guys are thinking in the comment section. Man, this motherfucker is blind. It's like Deontay Johnson was clearly picked at this pick. You're already thinking it. I'm trying to gun him down. Right there at the 6-1. I control F'd it. He was picked at the 6-1. Sorry for the delay there. Interesting that they were kind of all picked closely, whereas I've seen Johnson go a lot earlier than this. Same thing goes with Claypool, so very interesting to see how this draft has fallen. And it's also good to do these because everyone's actually trying. When you're doing a mock draft on like NFL, ESPN, no one's really trying. They're going to pick a kicker in like the 3rd round, and they're going to leave. Now that money's on the line, people are more likely to stay here throughout the whole thing, and we can have a fun time all together. So, now we are close to getting back up on the board. Cortland Sutton comes off the board, followed by Robbie Anderson, TJ Hawkinson, Curtis Samuel, and Devontae Smith out of Alabama. Now we're up on the board. Is there still a running back here that we like? Not really. Not really. I'm fading heavily the Tampa Bay backfield, Jones and Fournette. I'm fading the Houston backfield, David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep drafting some wide receivers here. Now the question is, who do I like out of these guys? I really like Debo. I like Jerry Jeudy as well, but the quarterback situation on both of those teams is unknown. Same with the guy I went with in Brandon Cooks, but I do think regardless of the quarterback, Houston is lackluster at the wide receiver position, and they don't have any draft picks to really go ahead and address that, and Brandon Cooks is clearly the #1 guy on that team with Will Fuller in Miami. I think it's kind of sneaky to get a guy like Brandon Cooks late. Now, obviously, Brandon Cooks does have that aura around him that this guy just gets concussed all the time, and you're not wrong, but he really doesn't have a long history of missing a bunch of games, right? He misses like a game a year. He's not missing like 5 games every single season, so I'm really much kind of confused as to what the negatives are with Brandon Cooks. Obviously, a huge negative is we have no idea who the fuck his quarterback's going to be, but to me, the upside is very high there. Michael Gallup's an interesting pick as well. When talking about redraft, it's hard to figure out which one of those guys to start every single week, and likely, every single week you're to watch like week 5 wide receivers, start or sit. I'm going to be talking about how I want to start everyone but Gallup. Does that mean Gallup's a bad wide receiver? No, but when you have 2 elite wide receivers like Amari Cooper, like CeeDee Lamb, it's very hard for Michael Gallup to get the ball in that situation. Michael Pittman comes at the 809, followed by Laviska Shenault, 2 young wide receivers that I talked about in second-year breakout wide receiver video, I think it was called, or must-own second-year wide receivers. I like Pittman a decent amount. Laviska, not as much with Laviska Shenault. I actually think that he's pretty solid, but it does worry me that now Marvin Jones is there, and that I don't feel like he's really a great fantasy option. I think he's a fun player to watch because he does all these cool things. He's shifty and all, but he's, in my opinion, not the greatest for redraft fantasy. After that, we see Hollywood Brown, followed by Kenyon Drake. Now, in the 9th round, Drake's an interesting pick because the talk out of Las Vegas is that he is going to be the slot receiver on the team at times, get a decent amount of work. If Josh Jacobs was to go down, I like the move, but otherwise, it is kind of worrisome. So, now we're on the board here. Do the Patriots address running back, or is Damian Harris going to be a value again? We don't know right now, so I'm going to go with him. I think he is clearly the running back 1 on this team when healthy, as long as they do not draft another running back. Obviously, there's a chance that they do, but based on what we know right now, Damian Harris showed me enough last season that even without getting he literally never caught the ball during these games, he was still getting like 10 points a game, and that's good enough for me. At the 9-5, we see Kyle Pitts come off the board, which was a guy that I wanted to talk about. So Kyle Pitts, tight end, out of Florida. This guy is what I describe as an OW offensive weapon, or an OU offensive fucking unit. This guy is insane. Insane. Watch his tape. He looks crazy. Now, if he lands on Atlanta, this seems like kind of a crazy pick in my opinion, because there's a lot of guys in Atlanta who are going to be getting the ball. But if he goes to Miami or Cincinnati, sheesh. I mean, I'd still like him in Atlanta, but I'm not too sure I would love him this year. After Kyle Pitts, we see Deebo Samuel, followed by Mike Davis, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Dallas Goedert, and David Johnson. So it's probably time for us to snag a quarterback before it starts going real downhill. Now, normally in redraft leagues, I'm the kind of guy that just drafts 1 quarterback. I'm not really out there looking to draft 2-3 guys. Now, especially if you draft a guy earlier like Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, there's really no need, in my opinion, to draft a second quarterback, and I would be very happy just sitting there with the 1 guy that I ended up drafting. Now, in this kind of a league in best ball, you got to draft like 2 or 3, and if you're drafting a guy like Deshaun Watson, you definitely need to be drafting 3, since we don't know what's going to be happening with him. So after Judy, we see Leonard Fournette. Now, Fournette's a running back that I like. Same thing with Ronald Jones, but the fact that they both re-signed to Tampa Bay just completely dismantles their value in redraft, because you won't know which one to start. Now, luckily in best ball, you don't have to worry about starting them. They just fly in your lineup when they drop the 15, 20 points that they should be getting, but you in a normal redraft league, you're not going to know. You're not going to know, and likely the best option is to start neither a majority of weeks, because Bruce Arians does this trickery on you where he'll tell you, oh, it's Ronald Jones season, and then Leonard Fournette goes out there, drops 150 yards and a touchdown. And then the next week, it's Fournette. Then boom, Ronald Jones balls out. So it's very, very confusing to kind of dissect his thought process. But now we're here, and we're drafting my main man, Tampa Bay Tom Brady. Now, I'm actually close between drafting Tom Brady and Ryan Tannehill, and I think I'm going to lean Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee, the only 10 I see. Now, it is close between those guys, because Brady is just always going to finish as a top 12 guy. It just seems like it. Seems like the wheels are never going to fall off. That TB12 method, whatever the fuck he's doing, snorting coke, doing whatever. I don't think he actually does coke, but maybe he does. Maybe that's why he's so skinny. Maybe he chain smokes cigarettes. You never know. But Tom Brady, not athletic at all. fucking 7,000 years old and still slings it and finishes a top 12 quarterback. So it's almost a no-brainer to draft him in the 10th round, but I do like the upside of Tannehill turning it up yet again this year, and he's also a very safe quarterback. So after we went with Ryan Tannehill, Jeff Wilson Jr. came off the board. Now, the 49ers backfield is very interesting because all of those guys could be great. They really could. Wilson, we saw Tevin Coleman leave. Raheem Mostert, either of those guys could be really good, and they typically run with the hot hand, so in season, it's actually not that hard to figure out, because we'll figure it out a couple weeks in, if it's Wilson, if it's Mostert, and then inevitably, one of them always ends up getting hurt, knock on wood, let's hope it's not either of them, and then it's very clear which one to be starting on a week-in, week-out basis. After Ronald Jones, we see Logan Thomas. Now, the Washington football team just signed a tight end, in real life, that played basketball, but, like, has never played football in his life. And they signed him. Crazy. Crazy to think, to be honest with you. But, you know, Riverboat Ron's a crazy man, and I respect it. Shout out to Riverboat Ron. After Logan Thomas came Devontae Parker, followed by Deshaun Watson. Probably in August, by the time we're doing our real drafts, we'll know what's happening with Watson. So at least we got that for us. So Corey Davis comes off the board as a Jet. I'm not super in love with Davis. We're going to hop back on the running back or wide receiver train here. I think we're going to go running back because James Conner is still available. And I think that on Arizona, he might actually be the running back one. Now, I posted a video yesterday talking about kind of how that impacts the Arizona backfield. And in reality, who knows? We won't know until August who the guy is going to be there. James Conner is one of those injury-prone guys that's going to probably end up getting hurt. But can he be the starter before he gets hurt? Is he better than Edmonds? In my opinion, yes. But Edmonds has also been there for longer. How does Cliff feel about it? We don't really know. We won't know until August when we see these motherfuckers in preseason doing their dance. But as of right now, I think James Conner is actually a very worthy of an 11th round pick because he could legitimately be the starting running back of that team. After we went James Conner, Jalen waddled away, waddle, to the very next day. Bum, bada, ba, came out the board, followed by old man Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, and Jarvis Landry. After Jarvis came fantasy darling A.J. Dillon. Now, A.J. Dillon was looked at, to me, and to many, as a league winner coming into this season. Everyone's thinking Aaron Jones is gone. He's going to leave. He's going to sign in Miami. He's going to sign in Pittsburgh. He's going to go somewhere else. But Aaron Jones said, fuck you and everything you thought. It's what you hear and listen. Shout out to DMX. Rest in peace. A.J. Dillon now is fucked because he's not going to get as much work at all. I don't really see why people are loving A.J. Dillon now in the 11th round. Again, it's just an upside pick, thinking maybe if Aaron Jones goes down. But I was seeing him go a little bit earlier in a lot of leagues, even with the news that Aaron Jones re-signed there. After A.J. Dillon came Tony Pollard, Robert Tonyan, Mike Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Mike Licky on Mike Gesicki on Joe Burrow, A.J. Dillon, followed by Matty Ice Baby. Dun, 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 dun. So it's probably time to select our second quarterback. Now, again, typical redraft leagues, I'm not looking to draft two quarterbacks this early, but Kirk Cousins, a.k.a. You Like That, is one of the safest quarterbacks in fantasy football. He's going to go ahead and be like quarterback 12 to 15 every single week. He's nothing sexy, but he's never going to disappoint you. And if something was to happen to Tannehill and for some reason Kirk Cousins has to play a lot of games, my team won't suffer tremendously from that. After Kirk Cousins, we see Jalen Reagor, followed by Kenny Gainwell. Now, Jalen Reagor, I don't know. I don't think he's ever going to do anything, frankly. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are fucking cursed when it comes to drafting wide receivers. They frankly just can't figure out who to draft. So it just seems like Reagor is just going to be nothing. After that, Kenny Gainwell, we see Baker the Faker Mayfield. Now, interesting, because Baker to me is not even as safe as a guy like Derek Carr who's going behind him, right? Because Derek Carr is still going to sling it in Las Vegas, but Baker is on a team that likes to rush the rock, so he's not going to get as much opportunity to spread the ball out. Even crazier to me is Daniel Jones over any of these rookie quarterbacks, even a guy like Jameis. Like, what are you doing? Daniel Jones to me? No. Now, Matt RD1993, if you're watching this video, I don't dislike you. I just don't dislike I just dislike Daniel Jones because I really don't see him getting it done too much this year. We're back up on the board here, and we're going with the boy, Cole Beasley. Now, Cole Beasley is just sneaky as fuck because he is a slot wide receiver, and it's never too sexy to have a slot receiver starting on your fantasy roster, but when he goes ahead and makes it into your lineup as like a flex, you're very happy because Beasley's going to get you 12 plus points a game, and he has the upside to go off because of how potent the Buffalo Bills are in scoring points in real life, which is very good for scoring fantasy football points. After Cole Beasley, we see Marvin Jones, Jamison Crowder, and Nyheim Hines. Now, Crowder's an interesting pick because we've only seen Crowder strive with Mono Man Sam. Now, Sam Darnold is gone. He's in Carolina. Jamison Crowder going to be likely with Zach Wilson, the future of New York. So, how does Crowder do? I don't know. Maybe it was Gaze's system. That was why he was getting so many targets. So it's interesting to see what it's going to be like maybe if he doesn't get 10 targets a game or some obscene number that he was getting with Sam Darnold and Adam Gase last season. After Nyheim Hines, we see Eagles over here select Mr. Evan Ingram. Now, I wish that the Giants were in a position to draft a tight end named Kyle Pitts because that would be amazing, but obviously they brought in Kyle Rudolph as well, so Evan Ingram is pretty much just off my board because I think Kyle Rudolph just kind of scares him enough and gets on the field enough to where Ingram really isn't worth it. After that, we see Gus Bus Edwards, Justin Fields, and Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I love Gus Edwards in the late rounds because if something was to happen to J.K. Dobbins, who I drafted, like I said earlier, that Baltimore Ravens team loves to run the ball, and it opens the door very wide for a serious amount of rushes for a guy you drafted in the 13th round. After Tua came J.D. McKissick, who's a guy I also like later because we saw even with Antonio Gibson playing well, J.D. McKissick was also getting a decent amount of touches, and when Antonio Gibson went down, McKissick was definitely a solid starter for your fantasy roster. After Zach Moss, we see Hunter Henry. Now, at the tight end position in New England, I am straight up fading both Henry and Jonnu Smith. Now, week in, week out, it's going to be impossible to figure out because one of them is going to ball out, the other one isn't, and I don't think we're even going to be able to figure it out in the season which guy it will be week in, week out, unless one of them gets hurt. Now, both of those guys, kind of injury prone, so if one goes down, maybe you're like, holy shit, I love Jonnu this week, and boom, you throw him into your lineup, and you're very happy with him. But besides that situation where one of them gets hurt, I don't really like either of them, if I'm being completely honest with you. I don't really like any of these Patriots wide receivers or tight ends because I also just don't trust Cam Newton unless, of course, they trade up and draft Mac Jones or something, which we just don't know about just yet. That's why fantasy drafts are so fun right now because there's so much to talk about. There's so much randomness to it. Next month, or at the end of this month, once this best ball championship is done, the draft is done, then we're going to know a lot of these things, and it might make it a little easier to pick, but it's not as fun to talk about because now we got a whole lot of situations to talk to. After Mr. Hunter Henry came off the board, Sterling Shepard, followed by Mecole Hardman. So now we're going to hop back onto the wide receiver train here and get a guy that I like a decent amount, and that's Denzel Mims. Now, I know I kind of just besmirched Jamison Crowder's name, but we haven't seen much out of Denzel Mims, and I think with a new quarterback, a new head coach that will actually know how to use him, Denzel Mims out of Baylor should be able to produce quite well in his second season after kind of having an injury-riddled rookie campaign. After Denzel Mims came Laviska Shenault, Chuba Hubbard. Now, Chuba Hubbard, however you want to say his name, out of Oklahoma State, was one of those guys that was looked at as, holy shit, this guy's elite going into the 2020 college football season, and then everything fell apart. Everything fell apart for the guy. He fell directly down the rankings. But where do NFL guys feel about him? If he is drafted in a spot where he could be a handcuff and potentially get work, I think Chuba could really dominate as a nice handcuff. After that, we see Austin Hooper, a guy that I'm just not looking to draft at all. A lot of people were on board with him last year based upon him moving from Atlanta to Cleveland, but I told everyone it's because Atlanta likes to use the tight end in their second, third, fourth, fifth year of them being on the team, which is what Hooper did. He had the second-year breakout on team. Who would have known? And then They ship him off to Cleveland, and he sucks. After that, we see Derek Carr, followed by Rashad Bateman, and we are slowly getting back up onto the board. Again, guys, if you have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So it's probably time to hop back onto the tight end train here and select my boy Hayden Hurst. Now, again, if Pitts goes to Atlanta, this pick goes down the drain, but I do think that Hayden Hurst is still good. Now, I know people laugh at me. Nick, you loved Hayden Hurst last year. How'd he do? He was top 12 tight end, but he didn't kind of live up to my expectations. But if they don't draft Pitts, I think he may actually live up to those expectations in 2021. So now we are back up close to being on the board. Carson Wentz comes off the board, followed by Darnell. Here comes the Monet, Christian Kirk, Trey Sermon, and then we see Cole Kmet. Kmet's also an interesting late-round tight end who got a bit of work, but now that Jimmy Graham is gone, we could see Kmet really have a great sophomore year in the NFL in Chicago. So we're looking back up at our picks. We already have 2 quarterbacks in Tannehill. I'm going to move myself up to the top here so you guys can see my team a little bit better. I apologize. I'm going to shrink myself a little bit. Shout out to the fax machine behind me because actually it's a printer. I had to print out some stuff for school, so that's why it is just chilling over there. So again, obviously people were making fun of me before because I had it was actually kind of funny because I had a toaster behind me because my kitchen's being done or redone upstairs. So I just decided to put it down here so I can make some Tostitos, some pizza rolls at night. And then, you know, I was getting called like fucking Chef Ramsay Jr. No one was actually calling me that. That's what I was calling myself. But people were making jokes about it. It is what it is. Now we've got a fax machine because I'm spitting facts. I'm just kidding. That's a fucking cringe joke. So after Jonnu Smith came out the board, Rashad Penny came out the board, followed by Devin Singletary, Henry Ruggs, Eric Ebron, and Rob Gronkowski. Now Rashad Penny is a guy that is never going to get it done. Every single year someone's going to draft him. Every single year the guy will never touch the field, just like I will never touch a woman. After Rob Gronkowski came at the board came T.Y. Hilton. Now, Gronk's an interesting pick later in drafts because I actually think that Gronk might see a little bit more playing time during the season than he did last year. Last year, he was doing a lot of blocking, not a lot of receiving, but then again, maybe just in the playoffs, they want to use him more that way. So I don't really know what to think about Gronk, but we are going to hop back onto the running back train here and get a guy that I like a decent amount in Michael Carter Jr. out of UNC. Now, he is the back that him and Mr. Javonte Williams kind of played the 1-2 punch in UNC, but I do think that in the perfect situation that he could be a third down back, a pass-catching back in the NFL, and that's kind of worthy of a pick inside the 16th round. After that, we see Cam Newton, followed by Rondale Moore and Javonte Williams. Now, what the fuck is wrong with people drafting Cam Newton over Jared Goff, over Jameis Winston? Like, I don't get it. I really don't like Cam Newton now. I have nothing against the guy. He seems like a cool guy. He got bodied by that one kid, if you guys remember that clip where the fucking dude told him he was washed up, this high school kid. What an idiot of that kid, though. Kind of dumb move, you know, telling some NFL guy he's washed up. Meanwhile, this guy's attending his camp. I mean, come on, man, as they would say on ESPN. But I want to get Jameis. I hope that this person does not pick Jameis Winston because I want him on my team. Jameis Squinston is what they were calling him because he needed eye surgery. But now, he got the LASIK. Drew Brees is gone. Taysom Hill is not a starting quarterback in the NFL, so we are going to see Jameis Winston get it done in New Orleans. This guy is a gun-fucking slinger to the maximum. This guy will throw it to you whether you're open or not. That's what I love about Jameis. Jameis is one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL, but now that he's got LASIK, maybe he could tell the difference in color on the uniform. Maybe like, oh shit, that's a Saints jersey now. What might get confusing is when he plays up against the Bucks twice a year, maybe he fucks up. Oh, I thought I was on the Bucks and throws a pick. That's obviously a joke. I doubt he is that dumb. I love Jameis Winston. Eat a W and steal some crab legs. After that, we see Perry Campbell of the Indianapolis Colts, followed by Nelson Aguilar and Russell Gage, and then Terrence Marshall out of LSU. After Marshall came Ryan Fitzpatrick. Very interesting. Fitz is a very fun pick in fantasy leagues because just like with Jameis, it's kind of going to be really in there in a game or he's really out of it. Fitzpatrick is either Ryan Fitzmagic in a game or he's Ryan Fitzpick throwing like 12 interceptions or he's just on like Donkey Kong. And maybe that's how Jameis plays as well. So two very spicy guys being picked inside of the 17th round. After that, we see Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Elijah Moore, Darius Slayton, Gerald Everett, Josh Reynolds is his name, John Brown, and Blake Jarwin. So now we're back up on the board here, and we need to draft some more wide receivers. So we're going to go with my boy, Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Now, I think that given the correct landing spot, that this guy could be very valuable year one in the NFL. Now, again, a guy you're drafting in the 18th round, you're not hoping does too much, but the upside is there based on what I've seen on film with him at Florida. So now we're back up on the board after we went with Tony Kane, Van Jefferson, Alexander Madison, Tariq Cohen, Alan Lazard, AJ Green, and Chris Herndon. So now we're hopping back on the wide receiver train here, and I'm going to go ahead and just go with one of my guys, and that's Preston Williams. Now, obviously, if the Dolphins draft a wide receiver, which they should, Williams won't be as relevant, but there's also a chance if they draft Chase, they end up trading away Devontae Parker, which also kind of opens up space in this offense for Preston Williams to get some work. And again, I really like Preston Williams' skill set and what I've seen out of him in Miami, but his health is definitely a big, big no-no when it comes to kind of trying to figure out what overall, it's just a 19th round pick with some decent upside based upon what I have seen as a Dolphins fan. So now we're looking to get our last pick, and I think we can just go ahead and draft another tight end. And I actually like Jared Cook a ton. I don't know why he's ranked so low here. He's clearly the starting tight end of the LA Chargers, and it seems like Herbert liked throwing to the tight end last year, at least when Hunter Henry was healthy. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, freer than free 20th round pick because, Jared Cook's still good. He's not super old anymore. He was still solid on New Orleans last year. So people are really sleeping on the boy Jared Cook this kind of draft season so far, but he'll probably end up being like a 13th round pick. People talk him up to being like a top 12 tight end by the time the majority of people are drafting in August. So I hope you guys have ended up enjoying this video. We are about to close out on the video. If you have any questions about drafters, let me know down below. You guys get a bonus when you sign up using my code, so I'd really appreciate that. And I hope you guys did enjoy. We're going to be going with Jared Cook here, as long as he falls to us, which he did. So, that about does it. Our roster at the end of the draft was Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston at the quarterback position. Our running backs were Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson, Damian Harris, James Conner, and Michael Carter Jr. Our wide receivers were Julio Jones, oh my god, I forgot his name. Tyler Lockett is his name. Jeez. Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Cole Beasley, Denzel Mimsy, Kadarius Toney, Preston Williams, Darren Waller, Hayden Hurst, and Jared Cook. So let me know down below what you guys thought about my team. Does it suck? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know down below. I love you guys all. Have a great rest of your guys' day. Again, drafters.com, code Notorious when you're depositing. I love you guys all. Stay safe. Happy fucking Wednesday. Good boy.